So, like things that you can't do is you cannot uh, take something that is, let's use the example of land, right? And or rather a parcel of property like a home, right? Let's say that you have a home, and the home is something that many people find to be as an asset, right? But let's reevaluate that for a second, because until the home is paid off, and the mortgage is paid off, it's not an asset at all. It's a liability.
Liabilities.
Right. So now, with because it's a financial liability and it's going to create some type of strain, it may not be a good idea to put a home into a trust until the mortgage is entirely paid off. Now, other reasons why you could consider putting a home into a trust, though, might be because the trust is going to be the consistent entity that remains present to pay for a home that will be given to someone else, right? It's going to be someone else is going to benefit from it, right? So earlier, the two of you mentioned children, right? Like things that you would want to protect in your trust, right? So now let's play with that idea for a second, because
Mm-hmm.
if let's say that the children are listed as the beneficiary of a trust, right? And the trust is listed as the owner of a property. Now, the trust is not for the individual who's paying off the debt, it's for the children who will essentially inherit it, hopefully debt free, right? So now, if the parent or the owner, the original owner of the property is debt free, the property is held in trust, it's not going to be going to the grantor, or the parent who created that trust is going to be going to the children after the death of that parent. Then we're looking at something that is essentially a living estate, right? It's a part of their living estate, okay? Meaning for the things that they're acquiring while they're alive, it's held in a living trust, right? You seeing how those things are connected there? Okay.
Getting there.
Okay. So like help me to help you get there. Like or like what could possibly help to get you there? Like let's create a scenario that maybe fits you, right? To maybe help you understand how a trust will benefit you and those that you're looking to care for. So what let's say and maybe not you per se, right? But a person like you. Let's create another person. What are we going to call this other woman?
Lena.
Let's call her Lena, right? So Lena, does Lena have any children?
Yes.
Okay. Well, like what? I don't want to ask like the intake form questionnaire type questions. I want to understand what Lena's thinking about, and what it is that where she's trying to get to in the future, right? So, where is Lena trying to get to? You know.
Lena is trying to get some land
Okay. And how soon is Lena thinking about getting this land?
in 2 years.
2 years. So when it comes to land, it usually is pretty expensive to put a down payment on some land, unless you're buying it outright. Would Lena be, which one would Lena be doing? Some type of financial agreement, or would she be paying out the land outright?
Let's say a financial agreement.
Okay. So does Lena understand how interest rates work?
To some extent, yes, she does.
Okay. And so is she prepared to pay, the down payment plus the closing cost on the land as well?
In 2 years, she will
In
be.
2 years,
If
she
her
will.
financial advisor leads her well.
Okay. So now let's talk about Lena's financial advisor helping her to think about where she's at right now and how to get there in the next 2 years. Okay,
Okay.
because um, out of curiosity, if we can't do it in the next 2 years, could we do it maybe a few years later? Like, what's the longest that you're willing to wait?
Let me just talk to Lena for a moment.
Okay,
She said 3.
3 years. Okay, now that's good to know because like I want to understand your time frame. Like how urgent, how important this is to you. Are there any other reasons why? Like how young is Lena? And how old will Lena be in 3 years?
Lena? Um, Lena will be 40 in 3 years.
40 in 3 years.
And she said that's the deal breaker.
That's the deal breaker. So, well, explain that to me. The deal breaker, how?
She says she doesn't want to be older than that when she gets the lands.
Okay, is that because she doesn't want to be paying off land at an older age, or is it for something else?
She said she didn't think about it that way. She just thought about age as a number in a mathematical equation, but now she is.
Okay, so will Lena be using any savings that she has currently or any investments to go towards the payment of the land in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yes, she will be using some of her savings from this year,
Okay.
and she has a strategy to continue saving over the next 2 years, 3 at most,
Okay.
where she'll be financially prepared for the down payment, as well as some investments, as soon as her financial advisor is able to get her some investments after passing his SIE exam. And then at that point, um, she is hoping to pay for the land in less time than the loan is expecting her to.
Okay. So what would you expect some loan most loans go from anywhere from 30 years previously, and now they're looking at how to increase that to 40 years, um,
Mm.
which in my world is potentially very dangerous. And can I explain as to why a longer time frame on an interest payment is
Mhm.
dangerous? Okay, so firstly, the interest is based on an annual, not just an annual, but also the lifetime of the loan, right?
Right.
So every year, like let's say that it's 12%, right? Now,
Yes.
if we divide 12% by 365 days, right? That'll tell us the actual daily interest amount. And then if we look at how much that's going to be every month, that's going to tell us how much we're paying actually in interest on a monthly basis. And then from there, we can kind of calculate forward, you know, what that interest is going to look like month to month to month for however long Lena is going to be paying it off, right?
Right.
So now I want Lena to understand that we need to make sure that the interest is paid off, but also that we're making payments towards the principal for the mortgage as well, or for just the property, right?
Right.
So um, if that's not something that's easy to pay off within a certain time frame, like at 12%, let's say that we use the rule of 72.
Mm-hmm.
12 by 72 divided by 12 is what, 6, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe you're correct.
So like that means that we have 6 years of a time frame to pay off the any loans or any financing agreements in order to make sure that we're not doubling how much we're paying on the loan in interest by itself, right? So because like basically in that 6 year time frame, if it's $150,000 to purchase a piece of land, then that's 150,000 plus the 12%, which will double in 6 years and become 300,000, which benefits the owner or the seller, but it doesn't really benefit you, right? Or Lena as it were, right? So we want to consider what's going to be in Lena's best interest. So this is kind of where we go back to the part about the trust, right? Um, so out of curiosity, does Lena have any done any estate planning or prepared a will at any point before in the past?
She said no.
Okay. Now this is potentially very dangerous as well because, well, who do you think is going to make the decision uh, on Lena's behalf as to who's going to inherit her property if Lena doesn't have at least a will in place?
The government, the state.
The state government, right? The state that Lena lives in. Now,
Hmm.
um, does Lena want that?
She said absolutely not.
Okay. And if Lena, you know, was also informed that a will could be challenged and also be taken to court in the same way, would she want something that, you know, put her assets into a position where the state is going to control what Lena does, or is something that it's going to follow her desires and benefit those that she wants it to?
She says it sounds like she wants the trust.
Okay, well, Lena's been doing some research, so Lena also understands that a trust avoids probate court, right? So no state government gets involved. I don't know if that's helpful for Lena, if that makes her maybe feel a little bit more comfortable in knowing that whatever assets are held in her trust are not going to go through the state's hands to be given to her beneficiaries, right? Which also means and leads me to the conversation or the part where we discuss whether or not Lena wants the trust in her name or maybe in the name of those that are going to benefit from her assets or her hard-earned work.
So you're saying that the trust could be in her children's name, per se?
It could, and it's within the law, the legal parameters that say she could do that if that's something that she wants. It's just that not a lot of many people do that because they don't know it, right? Um, but like this is some of that boring stuff that you know I like to look at because I don't want the state getting the money. Let's just be honest. Let's just be honest and frank. I don't want the state getting any of my assets, and so like this is the same kind of approach that I would put in play for myself, and what I've also provided other clients before as well, right? So, with purchasing land, Lena could put that land into a trust where even if it's named on the behalf of the beneficiaries, but she's funding it, or taking care of those debts, and she's ultimately sitting in a trustee position. All right. Which just means that she's the one that will manage how the trust uh, handles those assets and distributes them to the beneficiaries, right? And also she'll be in charge of at what time the beneficiaries are receiving those based on the determination of the trust, right? So like how many children like would you say Lena has that she would want to benefit?
10.
10. Okay, well, 10 children. So how old is the youngest of the 10 children?
2.
2. So would you want maybe the trust to mature at the point when either a when the youngest 2-year old, right, reaches the age of like high school, graduating high school or college?
She said she's thinking about it.
Okay. Well, and that's something that um, a living revocable trust allows her to do. Constantly think about it, constantly change and make adjustments to her trust if in the future she decides to make any changes if she wants, versus an irrevocable trust, right? Which may benefit Lena if she she was making, I guess you could say maybe north of 22 million, right?
Say the last part again.
If Lena was been like, somewhere generating income north of 22 million dollars, or had a net worth of 22 million, it may be in Lena's better interest to consider the benefits of a living of excuse me, a irrevocable trust, all right, which would keep certain things in place and lock it in place without any adjustments, any corrections later on. um, yeah, that would be one of the few reasons why an irrevocable trust could benefit Lena. But because we went the route of the financing, I apologize if I took the wrong presumption in thinking that Lena couldn't afford, you know, uh, being able to pay for land. Right? That's not at all my implication. And at this point in the conversation, I just want to make sure that that's clear. Right? Um, so, but if Lena could afford, and had that net asset value, right, an irrevocable trust along with some uh, proper tax planning could offer Lena some really good tax advantages. All right, as well as asset protection in her lifetime. So, but without that, without having that income level, uh, a living revocable trust provides both some really good legal protections. Again, it takes it out of the name of Lena, you know, puts it into the name of maybe a beneficiary. And, well, I mean, what questions might you have at this point,
Well, now Lena is wondering what revocable means in terms of like her assets being less than $22 million. Does this mean that it can just be taken at any point in time if the assets or the things that are within the trust, if the liabilities outweigh the assets at any point in time, does that make it revocable by the state government? That's what she's wondering.
Okay, well, this is a really good question that Lena is asking. And like to kind of sum up what I think Lena is asking is, with it being revocable, uh, is the government able to still touch any assets that are held in a trust, which might negatively affect, the beneficiaries later on in life, right? Is that a pretty good, you know? Okay, so
Pretty good start there.
all right, so to answer that question, no, right? The government would not be able to interfere unless there was some type of fraudulent transfer. And this is where I kind of was like talking about in the beginning, right? The things that you can't do with a trust is you can't transfer property into the trust if it's pending litigation, right? So, like, let's say it was a house. If the house was under foreclosure and then all of a sudden Lena decides, oh, I'm going to transfer it from out of my name into the name of the beneficiaries that are, own a trust, and et cetera, then that would be a fraudulent transfer, because any property that's being transferred into the trust has to be free and clear
Hmm.
of legal action. Okay, it's got to be stainless. Okay, so now, as long as there is no perceived violations, and like the law permits that there's like a 10-year period of time which like a property may be held in trust to where like it can't be seen as some form of a fraudulent transfer, right? However, this would be a good reason to not just title the name of the property in Lena's name, but title it in the name of the trust for the beneficiaries, so that way automatically it's being placed into those legal protections that already come pre-built with
Right.
it. And then, for other assets that Lena may have, like a savings account or a retirement fund, the trust can be listed as a primary or contingent beneficiary, and then that way, like, everything would transfer into the trust, and then it would follow how the trust wants it to be distributed to the beneficiaries. Whereas, like, not doing that could put it in some, uncomfortable positions that uh, I think you were trying to avoid in the first place, or Lena is trying to avoid in the first place. Um,
So basically, you're saying that, such as with anything, there's fine details that designate whether or not something is qualified to be put into a trust or kept into a trust, or put into a trust in the first place.
right.
And then, if anything, well, yeah, I guess that brings the question of, is there also circumstances based off of those fine details where the trust can be revoked at a later period of time because the government noticed something that
Mhm.
was maybe not allowed?
Right. In which case, like, by federal law, a federal subpoena issued would be one of the reasons why anything that's held in trust has to be disclosed to a court. All right. So anything short of that, it's as long as there's nothing that is willfully being done to, like, you know, violate any laws, you have nothing to worry about. And of course, like, it's not my interest to help you do anything illegal, or to help you, Lena, do anything illegal. But, like, of course, we want to do this the right way. So, um, income and funds that are, going there have to be, they got to be clean. That's the best way to put it. All right. Um, so, like, I know that we also have another attendee. What may be some of the questions that maybe we could ask, or that maybe you might have, for Lena's situation?
Um, my question was, if let's say you had a quarter of an interest in a home,
Mhm.
could you put that in trust?
Yes, you could. You could put that quarter of an interest of a home into a trust, to be distributed to the beneficiaries of the trust, upon, you know
Mhm.
to enjoy in life, for the beneficiaries, or, to receive as ownership in death of the initial grantor of that quarter interest. So
Good question.
it's a very good question. Some benefits to that as well, if I can also offer what they may be, would be that, in doing so, you also avoid having to create an argument of, like, who's supposed to receive what portion of that distribution, right? Whereas, like, if it was something that was, like, done by a will, in contrast, which is a death document, and, wills create trust, they create death trust, as in by virtue of the writer of the will dying. That's when the trust becomes, like, effective. But that also means that it can be challenged in a court setting, right? So if you owned a quarter of an interest in some property, then, like, you know for those that, again, would benefit, that's a way to prevent that argument from possibly happening, because it's, you know what wills don't have that trust do is a notarization,
Hmm.
right?
Really?
So, yeah, and basically with the notarization, uh, you're not only having witnesses sign that a trust is being created, but you're also having a representative of the state, that's commissioned by the governor of the state, uh, basically witnessing that document. And so, to essentially create an irrevocable trust, as as a byproduct of the grantor of the trust, the living revocable trust dying, you create a solid, like, legal document that can be presented to any court and to the state, or to a federal government to provide evidence. It becomes legal document. It's admissible in a court of law. And it won't be challenged. It can't be challenged.
Mm. So a will can be challenged, is what you're saying.
A will can certainly be challenged.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Under certain circumstances, I'm guessing,
No,
that are permitted.
Under all circumstances, a will can be challenged and contested.
What?
Yeah.
So what's even the point?
Well,
Try.
for the most part, so the difference also between a will and a trust, because of the notarization, is timing and planning, right? If a person wrote up a will, or their last testament, hey, I want this to happen, I want this to be da 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 da, and they just sign it on a napkin or something like that, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, but that napkin, like, I don't, what if one of Lena's 10 children comes to the court hearing and says, oh, that, I have another napkin that says this, right? And then another one of the 10 children comes and says, oh, I have another napkin that says this. This is what my mother wrote as the last will. Well, whose will is correct, right? Then they start looking at the times, they look at the dates of when those documents are written, for what purpose. And then the court is still getting involved and saying, like, look, we gotta, cut this thing on up. And oh, by the way, we're gonna take somewhere north of 45% of what's held in the estate, because we gotta eat too. So.
Yeah, then the state gets the house anyways, because everybody gives up or gets mad or realizes that they have to still pay on it.
Right. And then this is one of the reasons why, like, people more or less don't know about trust, because it doesn't benefit the state in the event that a person has their property in a trust, right?
Right.
So I mean, we're not going to make the state seem like some ominous, like, evil thing, you know what I'm saying? But if there's a system in place that benefits from people's lack of knowledge, they're taking advantage of it the most. So yeah. You guys asked some pretty great questions today.
Gave some pretty great information.
Thank you, and please tell Lena that I say thank her for her questions as well. Did you also have any questions as well that you maybe wanted to add on? Because we don't want to leave out the important decision. One of the important decision makers for Lena.
Don't do
I
that.
said, if you acquired a new property and you wanted to put it in trust, you were talking about that briefly, and I wanted to know more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when you haven't finished paying it, but it is going to the heir
Okay.
or the beneficiary.
Right. So now my question would be, if it's newly acquired, is it already, like, titled and deeded in like, an actual person's name?
Yes.
Okay. So then, because it's still fresh, what can then happen is you could transfer or sell, by quit claim deed, the property from one person to another, and then you just need to inform the loan provider, if there is a loan provider, that the purchaser will be making the payments, and then they'll issue a new deed for that property in the name of the owner. Now, if the owner of that new deed that's going to be generated is a trust, then you just transferred it into a trust. Is that trust managed by you? It could be, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And of course, is it going to be for the benefits of your heirs? It could be, right? So it's just a matter of you making the decision of, saying, okay, uh, let's go ahead and transfer some property, and then just put the other, the other third party that needs to be aware of the transaction, and that, hey, this new party is going to be the payer of the debt for the property until free and clear, and that, it, the trust will be responsible for the payments of that debt, not the individual, right?
Right. That answered that.
Okay. I see a smile. I see a smile on the face, though. So you gotta share a little bit more, so that way I also understand how you're processing this information. Like, what is this talk kind of helping you to maybe provide yourself and your family?
Well, I have a good advisor who laid some things out for me, and now it's just time to execute some things. So I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful that you got a great advisor too.
Yeah,
That the both of
me
you
too.
do, and it sounds like your advisors are keeping your interest at the core of what they're doing. So if ever they weren't, feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Sooner than later.
Absolutely. And and even if this is something you want to take to your advisor to maybe consider, like incorporating and putting into place, that's also what this conversation is designed to do, to give you some more insight, some more information, and as ammunition to help you get what you want to get done, right?
Mhm.
So
Most definitely. Like it's it's just a time to like execute those things, and it's just been a lot going on last couple of weeks. So
right.
yeah, it's have to set aside some time to sit down and really get those things complete and in order, so that it's not so now that's something that you don't have to like jump on and because something has happened.
Right.
That's like the biggest thing, like learning and sharing in these settings, like not having to try to jump on things because there was loss or X, Y, and Z, but basically taking care of things ahead of time so that if those things arise, then they're already taken care of and nobody has to worry.
Right. Well,
Right, last thing.
go ahead. You were saying?
I was just making a joke. Last thing our financial advisor wants is for us to have to write something on a napkin at the last minute for
Yeah.
him to deal with.
I would hope not to.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me to ask the question, like, what do you feel are some of the dangers to you guys, to you both, like not putting your trust or, updating your information if you already have trust? Like if you got beneficiaries and like, or you're changing addresses or anything else like that, like, couldn't it potentially hurt your planning if you don't update that information is or like get it put in place and get that seal of approval on it?
That's definitely the thing, is who's who. The beneficiaries, the ones who are left, that's what the fears that they won't be taken care of. That's the thing. That's my biggest thing.
Okay.
Making sure that they're taken care of.
Right.
Do you feel like it would take a weight off of you to like get it done?
Oh yeah, I said, because we may not have like I know I like to write certain things down, but then there's some things that we just like carry in our head.
Right.
Yeah.
And once you get that off of your head, it's like, woo,
Woo, for real.
like, okay, that's done.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
On to the next thing, because
Absolutely.
that's how life is. Once you get one thing taken care of, something else is ready to come and grab that attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it be a good thing.
Yeah. Let it be a good thing.
Yep.
So
Thinking space.
that's it. So, if you didn't know what I already do, I also help update information. Okay. And if you need to get that done with your advisor, definitely encourage you to get that, like to speak with them as soon as possible. Make sure that you again speak with them about quit claim deeds. This isn't something that a lot of financial advisors, financial planners, you know a lot about. They're aware of most things like regular estates because for the most part, most people that pretend themselves to be financial advisors are insurance agents,
Mm.
right? And so, like, most insurance agents will try to tell you things about, like, oh, yeah, your problem is going to be solved by more insurance, right? And that's not the case. It's going to be it's going to be protected better by planning, right? So, your estate, which an insurance policy is at application, is created, but even for your insurance policies, and this also goes for your retirement plans or anything like else like that in the future, as well as investments. You can list again your trust onto your beneficiary designation as either a secondary beneficiary if a person is married. Of course, we want their spouse to be the primary beneficiary on those policies. That way, while the spouse is still alive, they can still, have access to those funds. But if ever anything were to happen to the spouse and like there are children, then the trust being listed as a secondary beneficiary, well, the trust would go ahead and, if there's a custodian or any powers of attorney that are also there, will carry out the desires of the grantor of that trust according to their wishes, and at that time schedule. So, this is definitely something that you should consider with some of your other financial planning components as well. All right. Not just your insurance needs. All right.
Right.
So 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, investment accounts, etc. You can list your trust again as either a primary designee or, beneficiary if there's no spouse, or a secondary designee, beneficiary if there is a spouse. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just me being considerate and thinking about like everyone involved in the scenario. Right. And I guess like very briefly, and this will be the last thing I touch on, and then I'll let you guys go because I've already taken up enough of your time. But for the assets that you're accumulating, one other financial product out there that exists that you could think about a trust as is it'll take on the nature of an annuity in the future if you use it in a way. And you understand what an annuity is, yes?
That was always kind of tricky for me with the.
Okay.
No, I think I do know what it is. I just don't remember right now.
So, and bro, you wanna touch on what the annuity is, or I don't want to presume you don't know.
So, I think because my mother transferred her annuity, like she has like a lump sum of money, and it's basically invested in S&P,
Okay.
and so that money accumulates through investments.
Hmm.
Right.
So
It's like a form of retirement or something.
Right.
right. So that accumulation period is the pay-in period, right?
Right.
And at some point, when like say your mother reaches a certain age, it's going to begin to pay out to her and provide a stream of income for either a certain period of time or for the rest of her life, right?
Mhm.
Of course, I think it's in the person's best interest to choose the one that offers them the higher payout at the end of it, which may mean a longer accumulation period, but it also means a much easier life later on, right? So
Right.
you get to a point where the annuity has reached a certain dollar amount, let's say, which may make life a lot easier. They can be self-insured, meaning they don't have to worry about a lot of the financial risks that life would throw their way. They can also plan out for life's unexpected situations because, well, like money is not the answer to everything, but it's certainly a really good resource. Yeah. And so, if we could allocate any of those funds in the future towards other future needs, then that's what we'd be able to do with an annuity. All right. Or in this case, when we're talking about a trust, um, an annuity can also have a beneficiary listed as the trust as well, right? So other things to take into consideration. And in any event that like the person were to pass before the annuity pays out in full, because they opt for the shorter payout period with the higher return, then you know the annuity could still pay out to the trust as the beneficiary, and the beneficiaries of the trust would be able to benefit as well from that type of good prudent planning. Okay, so maybe a good idea that mom also has not just a will in place but also her trust in place. That way she's got this type of planning incorporated as well. All right.
Yeah, that's something I would have to find out as far as like what kind of like trust situation she got going on.
Right. Well, it may not be a bad idea just to ask, like, if she's considered how a trust could benefit her financial planning, or like, and if she hasn't even thought about it, it might be an opportunity for you to share something that hopefully was mentioned in our conversation.
Mm.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable questions.
Well,
Sometimes.
yeah, go ahead, please. It could be, but
I was just
how
going to
so?
say sometimes, we don't actually have to ask questions if we just talk about something we learned,
Right.
right? Like, especially with people older than us, like, oh my God, I just found out what a trust is. And, like, the government can really, take this and this and that if I don't set myself up to be protected, and just like kind of like leave an opening into a conversation and see where somebody is at, like find
Right.
out, oh, do they even know about this? And they might be like, well, what do you mean a trust? Like, what is that? Nobody ever told me about that. Is that something new? Or they might be like, oh yeah, I have the trust, but I have this type of trust. Or, oh yeah, like let's talk about it because you do need that. You never know where the conversation might go, but it might be a little bit easier to talk to somebody if you just kind of bring up something that came up, and rather than being like looking for things.
Right. Well, you mentioning that's a good point, because some people may think that they have trust as because it's a part of their will, right? But remember in our conversation that, like, that's a death trust, so it'll only be created as a result of that person dying, and then
Mm.
it'll go into play and into effect. Whereas having a living trust, which is one that they create during their lifetime outside of just their will, right, which again can be challenged in a court, right, then they can kind of move forward in that kind of a capacity, like with a greater sense of security and peace of mind, of knowing like, hey, got the trust has got it, okay, cool, and it's not going to court, no probate, cool, even better, you know.
Mhm.
So that might be a question that does open up a much larger can of worms, you know. And of course, like it may come easier from you either of you to your parents and your loved ones, instead of like some strange guy that you met on the internet, you know. You know, you're like, I don't know this guy. Who the hell is this guy? You know, I know you. You tell me what you learned. What do you know? Okay, because that's how we learn about professional services, or you know, and that's how most of us come into contact with a pretty decent financial advisor. You know, sometimes. So, yep. Well, I appreciate your time, and I guess at this stage, like if you're ready to transition into the next part of it, which is updating your information, let's schedule a time to do that. If not,